I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business with senators permitted to speak up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I have 8 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of both the minority and majority leaders.
Duly noted.
As the 115th Congress winds down, I'd like to reflect on the enactment of the historic tax legislation that passed last year and what's ahead for us in the new year. In December 2017, Congress passed and the President signed into law the most comprehensive reform to the nation's tax laws in more than 3 decades. For years, both sides of the aisle talked about the need for tax reform that would provide tax simplification, tax fairness, and increase America's economic competitiveness. With the enactment of the law that's called the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, we finally made all 3 of those goals a reality. Significant simplification was achieved for individuals by nearly doubling the standard deduction. This means people will be able to pay less and avoid the tedious task of itemizing their taxes. Overall, roughly 90% of taxpayers will file their taxes by simply taking the standard deduction. Moreover, thanks to a significantly higher alternative minimum tax, what we refer to around here as the AMT, that is an exemption, millions of middle-class taxpayers will no longer be faced with figuring out their tax liability 2 times. One time to calculate the regular tax liability, and the second time to calculate their tax liability under the alternative minimum tax. It also provided tax fairness by reducing taxes across every income group. In fact, middle-income families experienced the largest tax cut by percentage. Additionally, the reforms made the tax code more progressive, with taxpayers earning more than $1 million shouldering a larger share of the tax burden than they did under the previous law. In addition to nearly doubling the standard deduction, the tax relief was targeted at middle-class families by doubling the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000 per child. It also reduces the previous 15% tax bracket to 12%, and the 25% tax bracket to 22%. So, as a result, the typical family of 4 earning $59,000 a year will see a tax cut of more than $1,600 in the year 2018. Now, a key motivation for tax reform was to boost economic growth and increases America's global competitiveness. America's tax code should favor American jobs, American workers, and American businesses. That means leveling the playing field so that we're not put at an economic disadvantage with other countries competing with us. So the Tax Cut and Jobs Act brought the corporate and international tax systems really into the 21st century. And you can tell that it's already working because other countries are looking at lowering their tax rates to compete with us. And of course, what we did included lowering the corporate tax rate from 35 down to 21%. In one fell swoop, we went from a tax rate that was the highest in the developed world to below the world's average of 23%. So how can you be competitive if you're a country at 35% and the average is 23%? So this means that global corporations will be more inclined to create jobs here rather than in other countries. We also modernized America's international tax system. We were one of the very last countries major countries to tax businesses on a worldwide basis. By moving towards a more territorial system, we freed up more than $2 trillion for investment here at home that American companies were holding offshore. These changes to the international tax rules don't just help U.S. companies that operate globally to compete in the worldwide marketplace, but also help those companies grow their businesses here at home with more jobs, better wages, and increased investment. Just as important, we work to ensure small businesses and pass-through businesses, I guess we call them pass-through entities, receiving more equitable treatment compared to what a corporation gets. So we have a new 20% qualified business deduction benefiting pass-through businesses of all sizes down to the smallest family farmer or corner bakery. Enhanced expensing rules were included to help all businesses, spurring investments in new equipment and machinery. Our efforts have contributed to a strong and growing economy. The unemployment rate is at a half-a-century low. Wages are rising at the fastest rate in nearly a decade. And workers, employers, and small business owners are all very optimistic about the future, and more optimistic than for a long, long time. America is working again. As we look forward to a new year in 2019, with a new Congress and a new majority in the House, it's my hope that we can work in a bipartisan way to build upon this economic success I just described. I'll be doing my part as the incoming chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and I see plenty of opportunity. Unfortunately, I hear increasing calls from the incoming House majority pledging to erase the progress made with the tax cuts and the tax reforms that I have just outlined. The proof of tax reform success is in today's economy, obvious to most people. It's in the best shape it's been in for a long time. Why would we want to go backwards towards stagnation, pessimism, and obviously joblessness? Of course, no major piece of legislation is perfect. To the extent there are legitimate efforts to perfect the law, then I want people to know that I'm all ears. But to the extent these efforts would undermine the strength of the American economy for the sake of ideology, and that ideology would be hiking taxes and undoing important reforms to modernize the tax system and increase America's global competitiveness, then they'll be met with stiff opposition from this senator. Instead of playing politics, we should be focused on examining how the law is affecting individuals, families, and businesses in our respective states and districts. And where necessary, we should work together to take action and ensure the law is fulfilling its full potential. We should also work look towards providing tax certainty for individuals and small businesses. This would include making permanent marginal tax rate cuts for individuals and families, making permanent the doubling of the child tax credit from $1,000 to $2,000. Also making permanent the innovative 20% deduction for small business to provide certainty that's needed to make investment and to encourage that investment, and also to encourage hiring decisions. And lastly, the ability of businesses to recover the cost of investment in property and equipment faster. I hope my colleagues in the House of Representatives join me in these efforts. I've yet to hear a good reason why we shouldn't make these and other tax relief measures permanent. It's the right thing to do for the economy, the right thing to do for job creation, and the right thing to do for wage growth. I would also like to see us continue working on other important issues that we started in this Congress. This includes improving retirement savings, bringing the IRS into the 21st century, protecting taxpayers' rights, enhancing the competitiveness of U.S. businesses, and encouraging research, development, and innovation. I also hope that there would be plenty of opportunity to work on a bipartisan basis on tax issues involving everything from education to renewable and alternative energy to consumer-directed health care options. I've heard a lot about the desire of the new House majority to engage in oversight of the current administration. I will put my record of oversight up against anyone's record. However, I want my colleagues to know that I do not intend to engage in political fishing expedition. I think a person like me that's had an equal opportunity approach to oversight, treating Republican administrations the same as Democrat administrations, speaks for itself. So I will not go along with efforts to weaponize the authority of tax writing committees to access tax returns for political purposes. Such an action would be unprecedented. But if Democrats are interested in doing nonpartisan, good government oversight, count me in. I hope they will join me in my efforts to hold the IRS accountable to the taxpayers, ensure the nonprofit sector is living up to the purposes of its tax-exempt status, that they will also help me stand up for tax whistleblowers who expose tax cheats, and track down, expose, and address tax shelters. My hope is that in the new Congress, we will be able to work to address important tax matters in a bipartisan fashion. I'm proud of my strong record of bipartisanship on the Finance and Judiciary Committees. I intend to continue my good working relationships with my colleagues across the aisle and hope to forge a few new ones, not only in the Senate, but also with the new majority in the House of Representatives. And Senator Wyden, who will be the ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee, we've had a good working relationship on so many different issues over a long period of time. I think that we will be able to work together as well, and we've already started communication along that line. I yield the floor and suggest the absence of a quorum.